Welcome to Lighting Basics today. I'm going to teach you how to take some great shots, professional looking portraits, and help you learn the basics and really show you how easy it can be. So if you've ever been kind of frustrated or confused about studio lighting or maybe a little bit intimidated, that's okay, because I'm here to help you get through it, and we're going to have some fun taking pictures today. We've got a model coming in around 2 o'clock, and we're just going to have some fun. So let me formally introduce myself. Dave did a good job, but just wanted to share with you. I have been photographing, actually professionally, for about 16 years, but I really started photographing as a child, and I've always loved taking photographs, as I'm sure a lot of you do too. And everyone has their own story about how they've come to taking photographs and why they love to do it. And I have to say that I love to take photographs, but I also like teaching other people and helping you learn how to take great photographs. So I'm here to inform, inspire, and help you take great photos. And also, I did have a show, I don't know if any of you here had seen it, but it aired actually on the DIY Network and HGTV HD for about 5 or 6 years here in the States. If you ever travel to the Philippines or Australia, you might be able to see it there. But basically, I help people take better pictures and learn how to use Photoshop elements. And after I did that, I realized, gosh, you know, there are a lot of people that would really like more information about digital photography. And I started taping the show about 2005. And I realized that I really had hit an artery, so to speak, with photo information and people needing it. So a publisher came to me and asked me if I'd write some books, and I started off writing. I've written 3 books so far, all about photography and taking better pictures of people mostly, and also how to make some money at it. And then I also have, I produce educational content, how-to content. I syndicate it on cruise ships, it's online, it's all over the place, because I really do love helping people learn about it. And actually I'm giving away one of these DVDs today, so if you have a little red ticket at the end of the class, I will be giving this to a lucky person at the end. It has 21 different videos on how to take better pictures and work with the light and composition. So just a little bit about my beginning with photography. I've always loved photographing, and I think I started off when my grandmother gave me an Instamatic camera for Christmas one year, and just started taking photos of my family. This might resonate with you. Maybe that's how you started taking photographs too. And not only posing them and kind of posing them in situations and making things look the way I wanted them to look, but also documenting real life, capturing those candid moments. And that's really kind of the 2 parts of photography, isn't it? Where you're capturing things maybe in a journalistic way that are just happening, and life happens in front of you. Maybe you're not directing or controlling it, or perhaps you're posing someone, and then everything else in between. So we'll be going over some of that today. And if anyone's interested in following me around, I'm all over the place online. I've got a website, erinmanning.com. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all over the place. So if you're ever wanting for photo education, just type in my name into Google and you'll find me. So today, what we're going to be going over, some various photo ideas I wanted to give you, and just some basic camera settings to get started. Just a little look at lenses, because that's going to affect your camera settings and how that interrelates to the light. And that's what we'll be doing today, is working with the light, controlling the light, manipulating the light. I wanted to show you just some lighting basics that you can think about as I am photographing the model up here, and things you can think about when you go home. And also how to assemble the lights. I know when I first started as a photographer, and I had all this equipment, I purchased equipment, or maybe I was helping out friends with their photographs, and I was trying to put things together and trying to, simple things. I thought, gosh, I should know that, but no one ever told me the very basics. And that's why I want to show you exactly how to put together a stand, how to put together the light, how it really works. And then I'll be directing and shooting the model today, photographing the model. So a little bit about light. Let me just ask here in the room right now, how many people have shot with studio lights before, artificial lights, whether at home or in a professional studio somewhere? A couple people, okay. Yeah, I know it's when you get excited about photography, you want to go out there and buy equipment and get some lights and try to take some great shots. And I know it can be a little confusing when you're trying to get started and how does it all work. Well, just two things to keep straight in your mind as you're beginning is there are really two kinds of light. There's the constant light that's constantly or continuously falling upon your subject. That might be, if you're outside, daylight. But if you're using artificial lights, it could be photo floods, fluorescent lights. That's what we're going to be using today. Quartz halogen lights, LED lights. And this is really the easiest light to learn how to light with because it's always falling upon whatever you're photographing. So you can move things around and really get to know what a lighting pattern is or what a lighting ratio is and use that to help you be creative with your photography. Now strobe lights, those might be, say, the speed lights that you put on top of your camera, like say one of these, or even the flash that's the on-camera flash. You know, it's a little blast, it's a little strobe. People have, professional photographers might have a monolight, which is a light with the power pack in it that sends out that poof flash. Or perhaps they have a big power pack that they plug all their lights into. So basically it's either constant light or that strobe light that's the quick flash. And today I really wanted to concentrate on constant light because I feel, first of all, that's the easiest to show you, and it's also the easiest to understand as you're getting started and the easiest to work with. I have a lighting kit we're going to be using today called the Home Studio Lighting Kit, and with that comes 2 6-foot stands and 2 soft boxes, and I'll show you how the soft box really makes things look beautiful. And then also these 2 daylight balanced bulbs. Now when I say daylight balanced, some of you might know this, maybe some of you don't, but whenever you're under any particular light source, so it might be the outdoor sun, or maybe it's these lights right here, which look like LEDs. Every light source has a different color temperature, and that color temperature can translate into a color cast in your images, perhaps. So that's what you want to be aware of as you're shooting with different artificial lights, is what is the color temperature of that light, and also how you might adjust your camera to adapt for that. So the lights in the lights we'll be using today are daylight balanced, meaning they're about the same temperature as outdoor daylight. And then also in the box there's an educational DVD. If you ever get tired of watching me today or on YouTube later, you can always watch me on the educational DVD, and I give you all kinds of tips and helpful hints on all sorts of things to take great pictures. And today we'll be specifically working with a model in front of a backdrop, but on this it gives you all kinds of other ideas too. So I wanted to give you some photo ideas. This is one of my friend's little girls, and she's so cute, and so I decided to use both of them in one of my educational videos. And I just wanted to kind of show you some setup shots of how I was able to capture the great shot afterwards. And I just did it in my home. Now this is like the bad setup shot, just to let you know. This obviously isn't the gorgeous, fabulous shot. But this is how I did it. I was in my kitchen, and I also like to use a lot of props. Sometimes I go to fabric stores a lot and shop the remnant tables for different kinds of fabric. Sometimes I use those as backdrops, or throwing them around people, or flying in the wind with fabric or something. There are all kinds of creative things you can do. In this instance, I had some white netting, and we just decided, hey, let's stand in front of the white refrigerator and we'll put some white netting around you. And you can see my friend is over there adjusting it around her daughter. And I had one of the home studio lights here, and I'm going to show you more about these in a few minutes, off to one side, just kind of lighting them up. Now I stood back. I had a little bit longer telephoto on my camera. I believe I might have been using a 70 to 200 millimeter focal length lens. And I stood back and zoomed in, and this was the image I captured. Now this looks like, woo, this must have been in a super duper studio, right? With like big lights, and wow, that must have been, you know, hard to do. Well, it wasn't at all. As you can see, this was an easy setup. In front of the refrigerator, throw some netting on her, and used one of these home studio lights and just plugged it in the wall and turned it on. And here's another setup. This is Janina. And she helps me out quite a bit with some of my photo education photography. If I ever need to make a point, I know I can call her up and she'll come right over. And I take a lot of pictures of her for all kinds of things. She's also an actress. So here we wanted to take a picture for her Facebook page. And I just sat her in my living room in front of a fireplace. I threw a piece of old fabric over the fireplace, just held it up. You can see it's held up with books, behind her and gave her some flowers to hold, and we kind of played around with different colors of shirts and backdrops and things just to make sure the color really popped out. And she's got that dark hair which also pops out from the background, so I knew she'd really stand out from it. And you can see the flowers aren't even in that great a shape. They're kind of falling apart on the floor. I have a reflector off to one side, and then I've got a home studio light off to another side. I stood back, zoomed in, and this is the image I captured. So not difficult to do. One of the things I wanted to point out too, whenever you're taking portraits of people, it's really important to capture a catch light in their eye. You see that little square white light reflecting in her eye? It gives the eyes a little twinkle, makes people look alive and vivacious, as opposed to no light in their eye, which makes them look kind of dead. So you want to make sure you see some kind of reflection in their eye. And what's interesting, as you start to look at photographs out there, whether it's in a magazine or on television perhaps, or wherever you're looking at photographs, notice the shape of the catch light in the person's eye, because that's going to give you some indication of, gee, how did that photographer capture that shot? And that might help give you some ideas about ways you can shoot photographs. So as you can see in her eye, it's a square shape. So that's the softbox right there. Sometimes you'll see a round shape. Sometimes maybe you'll see just kind of light all over the place, which usually depicts the horizon that someone's looking towards in the background. Maybe they're outside. So all these things you can start to kind of get in and articulate and pick apart photographs to see how other people have done it and give yourself some ideas. Here's another setup shot. Again, in my living room in front of the same backdrop. This time we decided to use the netting that we used in the kitchen with the other girls. And I got in real close and brought in, you can see how close that home studio light is to her, and brought it down on her level because she was sitting down. It's just a little bit above her eye line and kind of off to the side. And these are the images I was able to capture. Now look at that catch light in the one on the right. You can really see the full square of the softbox. And of course it also helps that she had this beautiful luminescent, 15-year-old skin. But when you use softboxes, because they are soft, they soften the light, they diffuse it, they spread it out, so it becomes kind of a bigger light source, and it is more flattering on people's faces. Here's another setup shot, again, I did in my living room. And here I was incorporating daylight with the daylight balanced light from one of these lights. And I'm using it really as kind of a fill light from afar. And fill light meaning, and I'm filling in those shadows that are happening. She's standing next to the window, so her face isn't fully illuminated. And stood back and captured the shot. Now, there was another setup shot I wanted to share with you too. This is Alyssa, and she brought her dad with her that particular day as we were taking photographs. We went all over the place, to the beach, to the pool, all over, but here we just decided to take pictures inside. So here's her dad, John, and he's helping out at the photo shoot. And we were just kind of on the run. We were moving all over the place. I didn't really want to be stationary, so he's just holding up a piece of fabric behind her wherever she went, and that was our backdrop. And sometimes I use blankets or whatever's around that I feel is going to provide a nice backdrop so that things aren't distracting in the background. It's great, especially when you're shooting in tight spaces. And we have a great backdrop today that also fits in a tight space, and I'll show you more about that. So this was the shot I was able to capture here. And another setup shot, again, in my living room. This is Janina, now a little bit older, and she needed an image, a portrait of herself that seemed a little moodier than some of the other pictures I'd taken of her, because she's a young girl and most of the photographs are very kind of full of smiles and lots of bright light and not much shadow. But she's an actress and she was performing in a play where she needed something that evoked more of a mood, something that was perhaps slightly evocative. She's now 17. So here's the shot. Now this is just one light. Again, I'll show you this setup. In the background, I decided just to I had an old scarf, I threw it over the shoji screen in the background because even though I knew I was going to have a shallow depth of field, meaning kind of blurring out that background with my aperture setting on my camera and the long lens I was using standing back, I just wanted it to be kind of different colors. I didn't want any slats coming through to be distracting. And I also have on hand all the time a lot of what are called pashminas or scarves around in all different colors. They come in very handy for photo shoots. especially when someone's wearing something that maybe is a color that's not working with the background, or maybe they arrive and it's a color that really doesn't look that good on them. And you can tell, as a creative person, as the photographer, you can look at someone and say, you know, I'd like to see you in a different color. I might put you in a different color. So you want to think creatively and guide and direct the people that you're shooting too. Even if you're just practicing on family, it's like, wow, like I see you have a bright yellow shirt on over there. That'd be a great color to photograph, and you've got nice skin, and I might put you pop you against a bright color in the background that would look really dynamic. So you want to start thinking along those lines about what are your subjects wearing, what's the background look like, how do I change the background if I need to. So again, there's that shot, and she loved this, and we did this in probably 15 minutes. I mean, she arrived all scraggly haired and everything. We just brushed her hair, put a little powder on, and again, you know, now it's the 17-year-old skin, but anyway, it still looks great. And she did, you know, actually have a couple blemishes, but I just kind of turned her face a certain way, and those sort of went off in the shadow. That's another way you can use light and shadow to your advantage, because whatever's in the shadow recedes. Whatever's in the light comes towards you. And I use these lights all over the place, so a lot of times I'm taking pictures of kids, and this is a candid shot, one of those journalistic shots. And when I'm taking photographs of children, how many of you here have kids or grandkids that you've tried to photograph? And sometimes you notice they run around and move around a lot? Yeah. That can be difficult to capture sometimes, especially when you're inside and it's a low light situation. You know, how are you going to light them and not get a blurry shot? How are you going to make them look great, but also how are you going to capture an image of them and make it look authentic, make it look real? And here's the trick I use whenever I'm taking pictures of kids, is I always give them something to do. Give them something to play with. Give them something to get their attention into, because the worst thing you can do is have a kid stand in front of the camera and say, cheese! And it's like, well, you know, it's just that boring, not authentic shot. And you look at the picture later and think, you know, that's not really their personality. That's not really what I wanted to portray. But it's hard sometimes to direct kids in front of the camera, especially when they're really young. They're not going to comply. They're busy. They've got their minds on other things. So give them something fun to play with. And then they start to feel like they're forgetting about the camera. And if you're paying attention to them and talking to them and letting them kind of do what they want, they are more compliant in front of the camera, and you're able to just capture real life moments like this. So these are twins, and they're darling twins, but they were all over the place, coloring, playing with Play-Doh, and I was just able to kind of follow them around with the light on a stand. I also had a friend of mine, and I'll show you in a few minutes how he just took the light off the top of the stand, and we put an extension cord on it. He just sort of followed me around the house with the light, so I could just sort of chase them around and get some great shots. But in this particular instance, TJ's a little boy in the blue. He just was really tired and wanted to go off and do something else, and I went over and showed him the pictures on the back of the camera on the LCD screen so he could see them and really kind of get an idea of what was going on and see himself in it. And once he did, he saw himself and he saw his sister there. He thought, wow, this is kind of cool. Maybe I should give you a nice little smile. And oh, he did. And he's just darling. He was like really interested then. He was like flirting with me in front of the camera. He's such a cutie. So I would not have been able to capture this shot if I had just gone up to him and said, TJ, smile. You know, he would have been like, and kind of shocked and really not wanted to comply, or giving me that cheese look. So this is a little trick, a way to get great pictures of kids, is not only give them something to do, but also perhaps show them what's going on the back of the screen. Now I also use constant lights to take great photographs for, say, business people that want headshots. I mean, a lot of us now, we need headshots for all kinds of things. Social media, if you have a business, maybe you need to put it on the brochure or online. You can't go wrong with a great photograph of yourself. You should always be seen in the best light. That's my motto anyway. That's why I won't even go to restaurants without white tablecloths, because a white tablecloth provides a nice reflection, makes you look good. And in this instance, this is Dave, and he's been a friend of mine for years. He's a realtor in Manhattan Beach, and I had seen him at the grocery store one night. We were in the produce section, and I ran into him and I said, Dave, please, let me take a good portrait of you. Please let me take your picture, because the picture that you have right now in the local paper looks terrible. It just, you're a good looking guy. I mean, he is a good looking guy, but in the picture he just looks so bad. He had like under eye circles, his hair was all over the place, and he just had this funny look on his face, and it just wasn't attractive, and it really wasn't helping sell him as a realtor. So what did I do? Well, I brought him over, set him up in front of a blue paper backdrop, and he brought a couple different changes of clothes, which if someone's going to be coming over to your house, ask them to bring at least one other shirt or a couple different shirts. And a lot of times too, if people come over, I always have the iron out too, because you never know, people often show up with wrinkly clothes. But anyway, put him in front of this blue because I really wanted his blue eyes to pop out. And you can really see that, and his golden skin is a nice complement to that. So when you're choosing things for people to wear and backdrops, think about that too, is the color of the eyes. So what ended up happening is I gave him these photographs. He put it in the local paper. He put it on Facebook. He put it on Twitter. He put it somewhere else. I don't know, whatever social media site he was on. And he reported back to me about, 2 weeks later, that quite a few old girlfriends had been calling him up from about 20 years ago. It's like, you'd be amazed at all the activity I've seen. Let's see, a good photograph really does mean a lot. And I'm sure his business has improved too. You know, I kind of worked with him on the ad and kind of gave him the whole less is more information to put into his advertisement. But anyway, it worked. And here's another local realtor, broker, builder that I know in Manhattan Beach, and she needed a photograph in an environment, something that really depicted what she does. I mean, sometimes you just don't want a picture just in front of a backdrop. Maybe you want a little more information in there that communicates that. I mean, a picture tells 1,000 words, and you can do that just with things that you have in the photograph. If you think about even old paintings, the old master paintings, oftentimes they would put things in the paintings that would tell a story about that person, about how they would want to be seen or how they would want to be perceived. Well, same thing with contemporary photographs. She wanted something that showed it was in a home environment, having to do with home. So fortunately, she had a great home. So I just went over there and did a little light survey to see where the light was coming in from. And she had beautiful natural light coming in from the windows, indirect natural light. So it was just diffused. It wasn't, harsh falling upon her. And then I used the constant lights that you see here to fill in some of the shadows. And again, I had my assistant take one of these off the stands and just kind of hold it up in different directions so I could get some different light on her face and make it look warm and cheery. That's what she wanted. And that's what you need to find out from people as if you're taking their portrait, say, for business or a particular purpose, what exactly do you need it for? If it's for a dating site, it might look a little bit different than, say, their business brochure or even Facebook. Or one of your other social media sites. You need to kind of find that out. So she wanted something that depicted what she does that was friendly and professional. So of course a suit always works great. We talked about the wardrobe before I got over there, what she had, what looked good with her skin tone and what was a nice compliment. So all these things go into planning a photo shoot too. Oftentimes you might get lucky and someone just happens to be wearing the perfect thing and you just happen to find the perfect light and you just happen to have everything with you, but oftentimes that's not the case. So you really need to put some thought and some planning into something before you start shooting. All right, a little bit about working with these particular lights or any constant light, really. You can use any camera. Now, I know a lot of us probably started off with digital photography using a compact camera, and I use my smartphone all the time to take photographs, mainly because I want to upload them right away online. Or you can use a video camera with these, or of course, a DSLR. Now, out of the group, how many of you have a DSLR, a digital single lens reflex camera? Okay. It's a great camera to have. You can take some more serious shots with this and really have more creativity with your images because you can interchange the lenses. I'm going to talk a little bit about working with the lenses, what lenses you might get to go with this particular camera. But again, even if you're working with a compact camera, you can take some great shots with these constant lights and get to know the light and then graduate to something else. We're all in a different space and place in our lives. Maybe it's something that you don't want to spend a lot of money on right now. You want to kind of learn about it and ease into it. Wherever you're at, there's a place to start. So DSLR, working and setting up, let's say for instance you have a DSLR, setting up the camera. I just wanted to talk a little bit about image quality. Now image quality, let's say you've got a camera that's, it says 10 megapixels. What does that mean? 10 MP. Really a lot of us are taught, if we don't know that much about the cameras, is just look for the camera with the most megapixels. And that's like, oh, my camera has 12 megapixels, and mine has 10, or mine has 15, or whatever it is. We're in the megapixel war, right? Well, not necessarily. You can have great photographs with a camera that maybe shoots 8 megapixels, 10 megapixels, even 6 megapixels. You can get some great shots depending on what you want to use it for. Now, if you're looking at images online, you don't need that many pixels in your image for it to look sharp and clear on the screen. But you need a lot more pixels in that image if you choose to print it out. That's why if someone's ever sent you an image online and it was, you know, small enough to fit through the email and you received it and you opened it up and then you tried to print it and it looked all jaggedy, that's why, because there weren't enough pixels in that image to print it successfully. Usually for a successful print, a good rule of thumb is somewhere between 260 and 300 pixels per inch. Whatever, I'm not getting into the math, so don't worry about it. But basically what I wanted to say is when you're setting your camera, go ahead and choose the highest resolution setting the camera has, whatever the camera's offering you. Now you might want to shoot in RAW. I'm sure many of you might have heard about RAW. It's an uncompressed file. It takes up more room on your memory card, and also it takes your camera a little bit more time to process taking that image. The advantage to shooting in RAW, in the RAW setting, in your quality setting in your camera, is it gives you the opportunity to make a lot more adjustments to that image afterwards when you process it with software. So that's the advantage to shooting in RAW. Just shooting in high-res JPEG, at least shoot in high-resolution JPEG, and that's the L there with the smooth little triangle next to it. That's the high-resolution JPEG setting on your camera. Now, cameras vary, and maybe you have one that doesn't look exactly like this, but if you kind of go through the menu settings and start, you know, clicking around in there, a lot of it's pretty intuitive. You'll find something about whatever it says, high quality, at least choose that. And why not? Because the memory cards now that you can purchase have so much more capacity, and they'll hold so many more images, and the prices come down quite a bit. So why not, you know, have quite a few memory cards and buy the high capacity ones like the 8 gigabyte or higher. So making an exposure, how does your camera do it? Well, when you press that shutter button down halfway on your camera, it's going to measure the light and the dark in your scene and make its best guesstimate as to what sort of image it should take, what the exposure should be. Now, a lot of people might shoot in auto. How many people are shooting in auto right now? It's okay to raise your hand. It's okay. Yes, you know what? Auto's a great place to start. Don't be embarrassed about auto. It's a good place to start, especially when you're starting off with a new camera. There are a lot of bells and whistles on that, and you're just not quite sure what everything is. It can be overwhelming. It's like, I feel like I'm never going to learn this. And the manual, oh my gosh, that can be even more confusing. So it's a good idea to keep that manual somewhere handy. It's a good reference every once in a while. I do know a few people that actually read all the way through those things, but it's a good reference overall. And if you're shooting in auto, okay, you know, if you feel safe there, you can start there. But I have some ideas for you about places you can go, things you can do where you have more control and creativity. So here's the auto setting if you have a camera with a mode dial. And if you don't have a mode dial, then it says automatic on your camera somewhere. Or perhaps you have some basic zone modes like this. You recognize those little icons, the head, the mountain, the flower, all those things. Those depict kind of, I call them the auto magic settings on your camera that will tell your camera what shutter speed and aperture to use without you having to worry about it. And it just gives you some ideas about things you might shoot in those settings. So let's say you wanted to take a picture of a person, 1 or 2 people, you might set it to portrait mode, things like that. But you know what? There's a better way. And I want to share that with you. And that is the creative zone mode. To come over to the creative zone mode side, you know, that side of the mode dial or those settings on your camera that are the letters, not the pictures. And one place to start, if you're just going to like dip your toe over there, would be P. for program. What does that mean? P for program, basically it's a more sophisticated version of automatic. So your camera is still going to make the shutter speed and aperture choice for you, so you don't have to worry about that yet if you feel like you still need to graduate to that point, or maybe you're just in a situation where you got to turn the camera on real quick and I don't have time to figure out all the settings. Just put it on P for program, and at least you can take a shot and get something and look and see what your settings are. So P for program, also the advantage to this is you have control over your flash. With P for program, you don't have that in automatic. Sometimes your flash pops up when you're in the museum and they said don't flash, and then you flashed and it's like, oh, I'm sorry. So turn it to P and you'll have control over that. Also your ISO and your white balance. So I'm going to show you some pictures about that. So P for program. So sometimes if I'm in a situation and I'm just unsure what my settings might be and I got to take that picture really fast, I'll turn on my camera, set it to P if it's not already in P, and take a picture. And then I will look at that photograph on my camera and see what it says for the settings. What was the shutter speed? What was the aperture? Then I'll go to this place, M for manual. Okay, this is where a lot of professional photographers shoot, but everyone else can shoot in this too. And you just have to know one thing. How to set your, well, two things actually, how to set your shutter speed and how to set your aperture on your camera. Oftentimes it's like a little dial on the front or a dial on the back. You might have to actually reference your manual to find this out, but you can also just kind of experiment and see what's working for you. But set it to M, and I'm going to show you some other settings too. M for manual is going to give you the most creativity. So you set the shutter speed, you set the aperture. And remember, if you're not quite sure, you know, what those are, you can at least just memorize the numbers from when you shot the picture in P for program. And just look at the picture. So M for manual. So it gives you more control. Both, all those little letters over there give you control over your ISO. So ISO is basically it's your sensor sensitivity to the light. So did anyone here ever shoot with film? Yep, I shot with film too. I loved film. Film was great. I don't shoot with film anymore. I'm shooting digital completely, but remember when you buy the film in the store, maybe it would be 400 ASA for inside and 200 ASA for outside shots, and you'd buy it at the drugstore or something. Well, that was the film's sensitivity to the light. Now you can adjust per picture your sensitivity to the light. So maybe you're in a low light situation, and what you'd want to do is raise your ISO. Move it from, say, auto ISO and move it up the line. And each time you raise the ISO, in essence, it lets more light into your exposure, into your image. It's the sensor sensitivity to the light. So if you're in a low light situation and you couldn't use a flash and you didn't want a blurry shot, you would raise your ISO. This is really the ticket when you're shooting in low light. However, there's one little caveat. Sometimes when you do this, when you raise your ISO, you might be introducing something called noise into your image. It's kind of like what film grain used to be. And noise can be discolored pixels in the light areas or dark areas of your image. So sometimes it's a trade-off. You know, do I want to raise my ISO and maybe have a few discolored pixels? Or do I just want to have image blur because the shutter speed can't be fast enough? So it's sort of a trade-off, but oftentimes, especially if you have a DSLR, it has a larger, higher quality sensor than, say, a compact camera, and you can typically raise your ISO to at least 400, and sometimes a lot higher and not even see any noise. And if worst comes to worst, you can always get rid of that noise in an image editing software program like Photoshop Elements or something like that. Okay, white balance is the other thing you can also adjust if you're in one of those creative zones, like, or P for program. Remember I talked about the color temperature of light and daylight balance and all of that? So most cameras just default to this AWB, which means auto white balance. And if you look on the back of your LCD screen, that's most likely what it says, unless you're kind of adept at adjusting your white balance already. So on most cameras, it's a little WB button. See the WB button right there? It might be in a different place on your camera, but you press it and you can cycle through all these different options. So the little icons represent different light sources that you might consider. So what it's going to do is tell your camera to adjust for that particular light source. So you won't get a color cast in your image like this. Has anyone shot inside of a basketball court, tried to shoot like kids' games in the wintertime, and you go in there and it's like, oh my gosh, why do the pictures look so horrible? And maybe they don't want you to flash during the game, right? Because that can disturb the players. So if you're in a situation like this, now look up on the ceiling. Look at some lights are pink and some are green. Ugh. Those are other kinds of fluorescence. Those aren't the daylight balance fluorescence. And that's why sometimes if you're looking at your white balance setting, you might have different fluorescent settings for different temperature fluorescence. You have to kind of go through your white balance settings to see what you have on your camera. So what I would do in this situation is I would raise my ISO and I would go through and experiment and see which one of my white balance settings looked good in this particular situation. Because I don't really have that much control over what's going on with the lights on the ceiling or anything else. You just have to sort of adapt to whatever's happening. So this is how you want to adapt your white balance. Now, when I'm shooting here, I typically, when I'm shooting with these constant lights, they're daylight balanced. So I often just choose the daylight setting in the white balance because at least that makes all the pictures I'm shooting in that sequence, at least it's going to be the same daylight balance, even maybe if it's a little off for some reason, because I think when I'm shooting we're going to have a couple other lights on. We'll see how it turns out. But think about that as you're going through your camera settings. Okay, lenses. Lenses, oh my gosh, you can spend so much money on lenses, but it's so worth it. It's like that really good pair of shoes you bought years ago that you're still wearing. You can just keep using it and using it and using it. And I've invested in quite a few lenses over the course of my photography career. I started off when I bought my very first digital SLR. It came with what was called a kit lens, an 18 to 55 millimeter lens, which was fine to kind of get started with. But if you're interested in learning about other lenses and things you might purchase to change your perspective and change your images and maybe make them look even better, I'll give you some ideas. I'm going to talk about focal length and then lens speed. Good things to know when you're looking for lenses. So these are just three basic lenses. I have quite a few, but these are my go-tos in my camera bag. On the left, it's a 70 to 200 millimeter zoom lens. It's an f2.8 lens. That's the speed of the lens. So that relates to the aperture. And that allows me to set that kind of aperture on my camera when I put this lens on my camera. So that's a fixed, it's a zoom lens, so it's 70 to 200 millimeter. I can zoom anywhere out from a distance from 70 to 200. I'm going to show you some picture examples of that. But it's f2.8, so that's just a fixed aperture. The next lens in the middle is a 50 millimeter, and that's kind of a basic standard lens. I'm going to show you a picture example of taking something with this lens. And then also a wide angle lens, and that's 16 to 35 millimeters. And that really takes in the whole scene. It's the wide angle. So something I wanted to point out, if you have a lens right now, how many people here have more than one lens if you have a DSLR? Okay, great. How many people have 4 lenses, at least? Okay, a few more hands go up. Wow, okay, so you've invested in some lenses, that's good. All right, so some of you may already know some of this, but hey, you never know. There's always a gem in there somewhere. All right, I want to talk a little bit about focal length. You'll find it on your lens, depending on what it is, in different places. Sometimes it might be on the lens barrel here, and you'll see the numbers and then the mm afterwards that represents the focal length. Or, let me just go ahead and show you what the 50 millimeter looks like. I did a little example with one of my friends. This is underneath the Manhattan Beach Pier. And I wanted to show you what each lens looks like when you take a picture with it, and what you can do with your photographs if you get different lenses. So I'm using a standard 50 millimeter lens, and the reason it's called standard or sometimes normal is because that is a perspective that we see the world with our eyes. Yes, you had a question?
Is this a full frame camera or crop?
He had a good question, which I'm going to answer right now. He said, is this a full frame camera or a crop? On the camera I'm taking these pictures with, it had a full frame sensor, meaning it's allowing me to, when I put a lens on there, that is the exact focal length of the lens. Sometimes if you have a camera that has what's called a cropped sensor, that means that you need to multiply your lens focal length by 1.5 or 1.6. In essence, it just makes your focal length a little bit longer. So good question. And again, that was about the focal length and the kind of sensor that the camera had. So this is a camera with a full frame sensor. This is a 50mm looking shot, the normal standard way we see the world. He's standing in one place, I'm standing in one place. The only thing that's changing are my lenses. Now I put on a wide angle lens, and I'm probably all the way at 16mm wide. This is really taking in the scene. A lot of landscape photographers like to use these wide angle lenses for a couple different reasons. One, you can take in the whole scene, and two, they often give you a greater depth of field, and that means that more is in focus from near to far. So you can go back and you can see those pure pylons all the way back. It's not really blurry back there. That's what a wide angle lens will do for you. And then there's a telephoto lens. And again, I'm standing in the same place, so is he. I just changed the lens, and now I'm zoomed out all the way at 200mm. So what a longer focal length lens will do is help you blur out that background. It helps you create a shallow depth of field along with the aperture setting that you choose. So in this instance, I believe my aperture setting was probably f2.8. That's the widest aperture I could use, and my lens allowed me to do that because it was an f2.8 lens. I like to use this lens quite a bit actually with portrait shots because I can really blow out that background, and it just makes them pop out of the background. They don't get all mixed up with what's going on back there. And the other thing is it makes people look good. I'm going to show you a picture about that in a few minutes too. And whenever you take a picture of someone with a longer lens, it compresses space, and it gives you a better, more realistic perspective of someone as opposed to being up close in their face with a wide angle lens. But it also just makes them look a little thinner, makes them look good. I prefer to be shot with a long lens whenever possible. Let's talk a little bit about the lens speed again. Is it fast or is it slow? Well, you need to know what it is on your particular lens. Now, f-stop equals aperture, just to make that clear. So let's say you have a lens and it has a variable aperture. So you look on the barrel, and somewhere it either has an F and a slash or 1 and a colon, and then it has these numbers, 3.5-5.6. Or maybe it says 4 and 5.6. That represents the aperture setting on the lens, the widest that you can use. Now, the good part about having a variable aperture lens is they're typically less expensive, they're lighter, so they're easier to carry around. The downside is if you have a variable aperture lens on your camera, and let's say you set the aperture, you wanted a really wide aperture to blow out that background, you're not going to be able to do it if you zoom all the way out long. It's going to automatically go to 5.6. So just so you know, sometimes people get confused when they have a variable aperture lens on their camera and they're trying to shoot really wide open apertures, and they zoom all the way out and they're like, what happened? I set it on f4 and now it says f5.6. That's why. A fixed aperture lens is something that's say f1.8 or f2.8 or f4. That's one aperture, and that way you know when you set your aperture on your camera it will stay at that aperture. Now, these lenses are typically more expensive, there's more glass involved, and sometimes your pictures might actually look a lot better. You never know. It depends on what you're going for. A little bit about where the aperture and focal length again might appear on a lens. The focal length is at the lower, the numbers down there that say mm after them. And then the aperture on this particular lens is up near the glass. But let's say you have a Nikon lens. It might all be together at the bottom. So you just kind of have to look for those numbers and see what's going on with your lens. So let's talk a little bit about filters. So if you ever want to buy a filter, let's say a UV filter to protect your lens, or perhaps you want a polarizing filter. That's the dark filter right there. It might give you saturated skies and cut the reflections on water and glass. What size do you get? Well, that's another number you need to know about. And that is the lens diameter. And that's also on your lens barrel somewhere. And you'll look for this symbol. And that denotes the lens diameter. So if you have to, say, order something online and you're not quite sure what the diameter is of the filter that you want, this is where you find it. So I definitely, if you're thinking about lenses, definitely consider a zoom lens, whatever the zoom focal length might be, and just consider different options, because it's very handy to kind of get in and get out of situations, especially when I'm shooting pictures of kids or anything that's moving or sports. I don't maybe have time to run in and run out and get farther away from whatever I'm shooting with just a fixed focal length lens. So a zoom lens comes in very handy. And this is something great too. If you want to start building up your lens cachet and maybe don't want to spend a lot of money to start, this lens comes in a little over $100, I think, $120, something like that. And it has a nickname called the Nifty 50. And what it is a 50 millimeter fixed focal length lens. The aperture on it is f1.8. That's a pretty wide aperture. And that's a great lens if you really want to take some shots and blow out that background like I was showing you and kind of experiment. Now it's plastic, but you know, hey, it's $120 and it's a great lens to at least do some experimenting with blowing out that blowing out the background and creating that shallow depth of field. All right, so let's talk a little bit about controlling the light, because photography really is all about the light. It's about light quality and light direction. And I'm going to give you some examples. And fortunately, I have some really helpful friends that don't mind having ugly pictures taken of them, because this is an example of hard light. So as a photographer, you need to be able to identify what kind of light is in the scene that you're photographing, and or what kind of light you want to create for the look that you want. This is the biggest issue a lot of beginner and enthusiast photographers have, is identifying that kind of light and being able to then control and manipulate the light to make it look the way they want. I know when I first bought studio lights years and years ago, I was just blasting everything out. So it was just like, just everything was bright. It's, you know, what does that do? That's one way to take a photograph, but there are a lot. Shadows are really your friends, but the right kinds of shadows. So if you wanted to, let's say, take a photograph of someone in very hard light, it would be something like, say, outside, high noon, 1 in the afternoon, 2 in the afternoon. The sun's very high in the sky, it's very hard, it's very strong, and you can denote hard light by looking at shadows. Look at the edges of the shadows around her face and down below here on her neck. It's a sharp shadow. This is hard light, oftentimes not very flattering. You can tell she's even having a hard time keeping her eyes open, and she's kind of got shadows in her eyes, so not the greatest light. Now here's an example of soft light. People often look better in soft light because it's nice, even, soft, diffused lighting. And what I did to fix this particular photograph is held up a piece of a disc that was sheer transparent silk, and that diffused the light above her, the harsh light that was coming down. You can kind of do that too with these soft boxes, and we've got some diffusion panels we put on those. So hard light, soft light. Really good to be able to identify. And look at the light in her eye. For one, she's able to keep her eyes open, and two, now you can really see that beautiful catch light in her eye. And then direction of light's really important too. Side lighting creates dimension and form in whatever you shoot. Side lighting. So if you're outside and it's natural light, it would be when the sun is really low in the sky, early in the morning, late in the afternoon. But if you're creating it with studio light, it's just going to come in from the side. So, okay, why do I want to do that? Well, you want to think about creating 3 dimensions in your image. Photographs by nature are two-dimensional surface, but we can make them look 3-dimensional by incorporating side light. And that really shows off the dimension and form on his face too. I mean, look, you can see his little dimple, you can see some, lines in between his eyes, but maybe these are things you want to show off. The direction of light is important, so you want to think about, and I'm going to show you too when we shoot today, where to put the light and how to create beautiful light on someone's face. So this is not beautiful light. Speaking of that, top light, where the light's just right over their head. This might be the middle of the day. Again, you see shadows under the eyes, not flattering. Top light is just not pretty light. But this particular light coming up next is pretty light. And this is sort of coming from the top, but not quite. Instead of being right over his head, the light is more in front of him, so front light. And look at where the shadow's falling right under his nose. So now you can tell the direction of light, where it's coming from. So you really want to be able to look at other photographs now and identify, where is that light coming from? What did they shoot it with? That gives me some ideas. I might try that when I'm shooting my next portrait. But think about front light is beauty light. It's often used on women. It just diminishes lines and wrinkles and makes you look a lot more beautiful. So compare this, look at his face here, and compare it to this one, the side light. Looks a lot different. And a little bit about backlight too. And I'll go over this today and show you ways we can backlight using the backdrop with these lights. So backlight is where your subject has their back to the light if you're shooting outside, but in a studio you can just put light back behind them as long as your camera isn't pointed directly into it. You don't want to get any lens flare unless that's your intended desire, because lens flare lately has been kind of popular, and that's where you see little fragments of light in your image, or maybe it looks really sort of overexposed. But we can do it and control it. And the benefit of having backlight is it pops someone out of the background. It makes a little rim light around their hair. Okay. Now, when you look at these words, it's like, oh ho hum, really? Light patterns and light ratios, But look at what's going on with these photographs, because it's going to start to make a lot of sense, and it might even inspire you to do this with your lights. Light patterns and light ratios, just to have an idea. Even if you just remember one, it's going to be a huge benefit to your photography. So a light pattern. A light pattern is the relationship of the light to someone's face. So where is the light? In this particular instance, the reason this is called short lighting is the side of her face closest to camera is in shadow. And you'll see this kind of lighting in a lot of television shows, like CSI and things like that. They use this sort of short lighting. It kind of narrows a face, it looks more dramatic. And the way that I achieved this with Janina, she was on a little chair just like I'm going to show you with the model today, and she was just kind of spinning around in different positions to the light. And I'll show you the next lighting pattern. This is, again, short lighting. A student of mine shot Michael Palma, and it was one of the other photographers in the class, and we just sat him down on the chair and sort of spun him around a little bit, and so you can see he's got the shadow on the side of his face towards camera. This is short lighting. It narrows a face. So when you're looking at someone's face, we all have different architecture to our face, to our head, our hair, our ears, everything. You might look at someone's face and think, wow, she has a really thin face. I want to make it look a little broader. He has a big face. I want to make it look a little thinner. Just ways that you can really put people in their best light. Ways you can construct and be the architect of the light. And then broad light, and I'll show you this with the lights today too. Broad light is where the side of the face towards the camera has the light on it, and the side away from the face has the shadow. Look at her face now. It looks fuller than the other picture. Another pattern is split, and that's just like the other photograph that you saw of the side light of my friend. Just half is in shadow, half is in light. Why would you want to do this? You might not want to do this, say, for one of those realtor shots back there, or a business shot, unless it's kind of a really shady business. I don't know. So you want to think about, again, what you're taking pictures of. You know, do you want them to be bright and show lots of information? Do you want them to be moody and evocative? And, you know, this kind of is getting into that moody sector here with this split lighting. Anyone recognize this guy? Yes, wow, there are more people here that recognize who this is than anyone I've seen in the last month. Everyone else in my audience has been one person like, I think he's a painter. So you guys are smart. So he is a Dutch painter from the 1600s, and he really made famous this lighting technique that he used. In fact, a lot of famous master painters, it's a great idea to look at their paintings and look and see how did they light people in their paintings. And this gives you some classic ideas about ways you might light too. But here it is, Rembrandt lighting, and this is his self-portrait. Rembrandt lighting, look at his cheek over here on the right. It has a little triangle on it, right? That's Rembrandt lighting. Okay, why? Why would we want to use Rembrandt lighting? What does it say? Well, it's known for representing integrity, nobility. When people light this way, that's the kind of thing they're trying to convey. So here I've created a little kind of a triangle on one side of her cheek, and that is Rembrandt lighting. So now you're kind of learning some of the lingo, things that go on with the lighting. Yes.
If you're going to use a light meter in that picture, where would you put the light meter?
His question was, if I'm going to use a light meter in this picture, where would I put the light meter? Well, actually, I'm not using a light meter at all, but if you were to use one, you would want to measure probably right in the middle of her face and get a reading. You can also measure in the dark, on the dark side of her face, and get a reading, and look at your LCD screen and see how it comes out. Oftentimes now it's by sight. I have a light meter I like to use, but that's from my film days. I oftentimes really don't use a light meter when I'm shooting with constant lights. That's how easy it is to do. And I'm going to show you some other things too in the next slide about just some ideas that we can kind of detect things. You can be super technical about it if that's your thing. But in this, I like to keep it simple and easy to do. And there are ways to just kind of eyeball it. All right, ratios, lighting ratios. Well, first off, let me introduce you to my mom. Thanks, Mom, for being my subject in so many of my photo examples. I wanted to give you an idea of what lighting ratios look like, and that's where you have at least 2 lights if you're going to use various lighting ratios. And again, I'll show you how we're going to do this. But here's the example on the very left. This is a 1-to-1 lighting ratio. So I have 2 lights on my mom at a 45-degree angle, both coming in about the same height, same distance away. It's a very bright, cheery, kind of not that exciting picture. You know, the light's not that interesting there. There's not a whole lot going on with shadow. And also the direction of the light, because of the light coming in from the side, it's accentuating these lines right here on her face. So in essence, it was meant to kind of lighten up her whole face, but because of the architecture of her face, it doesn't work so great. So I wanted to do some experimenting and try different lighting ratios. So here on the 2-to-1 lighting ratio, what does that mean? Well, you could use a light meter and get very technical about it and make sure that the other light that you're using was half as bright on her face as the main light that you're using. Oftentimes the main light, or they sometimes call it the key light in photography, is the brightest light on your subject. Because our eyes are used to seeing one sun in the world. Maybe if we move to another planet, there'll be 2 suns. But right now, there's just one, and that's how we're used to seeing things. That's what's normal to us, what feels right, if we have one main light in the scene, and the other lights are filling in shadows. So here, on 2-to-1 lighting ratio, all I did is I just pulled one of the lights back a little ways, because on these constant lights, they're not dimmable. So to make a light a little less bright, you just pull it a little farther away and just kind of eyeball it, because you can. You can take the photo and look at it on your LCD screen, and you can also see the light falling upon your subject with these constant lights. And then a 3-to-1 or 4-to-1 or 5-to-1 or 6-to-1 lighting ratio means you're pulling that other light even farther away, or maybe just turning it off completely. Now look at, see, she has shadows now on the other side of her face. Actually makes things look a little bit different. It's starting to contour her face a bit. And you can really play with this and have some fun and make a lot of adjustments this way. This is one of my techniques called the puffer fish. And I might use it today. Our model's name is Laurence, and we're going to start the lighting demo in just a few minutes. But I wanted to show you a trick that you can use when you're photographing people. You know, if you have someone in front of your lens, you need to talk to them, direct them, give them some ideas, let them know how they look, try to be as positive as possible, because it's not always that comfortable being in front of the lens. You know that too if you've had pictures taken of you, that you kind of need some direction. You need to know how to stand, how am I looking, is this good, is this bad, you know what. So as a photographer, be positive, give some feedback. If something looks bad, don't say, oh, that looks terrible. Just say, oh, you know, I like it better this way, or you might try sitting over here, oh, let's try this. So that you're always giving something positive but real to whoever you're shooting, so that they feel more confident and relaxed and comfortable in front of your lens. The worst thing you can do is start ripping someone apart that's in front of your lens, because unless you want to get an awful look on their face, or take photographs of people that look really uncomfortable. Some photographers like to do that. But overall, if you want to take really nice portrait photographs, you need to make the person that you're shooting feel comfortable in front of your lens. So that involves communication, so talking to them before you get started, talking to them during the shoot, capturing pictures while they're laughing. You never know, that picture in between the pose shot might be the real photograph that ends up coming out great. Okay, but what is this? The puffer fish. You know, when people smile in front of the camera and they keep smiling and they're like, I'm stuck, and they feel their face is frozen. You want to help them relax. You can't just say, relax. You have to help them and give them some techniques. So this is one that I do, and I actually do it in front of them, which makes them laugh and feel like it's okay to do. And it's called the puffer fish. You just fill up your cheeks with air and blow it out. Give it a whirl. Seriously, try it. Blow up your cheeks with air, hold it for just a few seconds, and blow it out. All of a sudden you're like, I already feel better, right? You're more relaxed. That's what the person's going to be doing in front of your lens too. So you want to make sure that they feel their facial features look relaxed, that whatever look that you're trying to get out of them looks authentic and real. Sometimes, like if you're working with a professional model, they'll know what to do in front of the camera, most of them. And they'll have their looks that they've practiced in front of the mirror. They've seen a bazillion pictures of themselves. They know what their better side is. You know, they know all these things, and they move around and they just do whatever they need to do in front of the camera, and they know what to do. And you might not have to give them that much direction. But if you're shooting real live people that don't model for a living or act for a living, you're going to need to really help them relax, feel good, feel like they're in a safe place to be photographed. You're not going to laugh at them, make fun of them. You're not going to post the ugly pictures on the internet. You know, all those things. You need to just make them feel comfortable. And definitely respect is number one. Okay, so I wanted to show you a little bit about setting up the lights. And if I could get the lights up a little bit, I just wanted to do a quick little setup of the lights and show you what that looked like. And it looks like the cord that you plugged into my computer fell out. There it is. Okay, losing power. Okay, so what I wanted to do is show you exactly how to set up the lights. Oh, okay. Come on up, Laurence. I'm going to introduce you to our model, Laurence, and I'm also going to set up one of the lights and show you live and in person how to do it. So welcome, Laurence. Erin, nice to meet you. Have a seat, and we'll be working with Laurence in just a minute. But first, what I wanted to do is give you a live demo of how to set up the lights. What I have up on the screen here is a shortened URL that I created, and there's a video online that you can watch on how to set these up. And you know, different lighting kits are out there. Every lighting kit varies, but overall, especially with setting up, say, the stand, there's some basics that you need to know. And I do this too because I know when I first started off with photography, I took a lot of classes, I went to school for it, but I assisted people. I just tried to do everything I possibly could. And you may not have the time, energy, money for, say, formalized education, but just coming to classes like this, learning everything that you can online, picking up whatever you can from anyone that knows anything about photography is really going to help. But I just wanted to point out my first time I ever assisted anyone, they said, go set up that stand. And I'm like, okay. So I went to go grab the stand, and I'm like, and I was like doing weird stuff, like things weren't working, and it was going all over the place, and I just felt so stupid, like I should know this, right? But hey, you can't know everything. We all have to be at some point and learn at some place and pick it up. So they're just the very basics about setting up a stand. Now, for those of you that already have some artificial lights or have home studio lights, you probably already know this, but sometimes I've seen people set up stands that are looking a little shaky and not very stable, because you know, whatever you put on this is probably fairly valuable, right? You want it to be stable. So first off, there's usually some knobs here. So I've got a knob here. I'm just going to untwist a little bit to the left. Lefty-loosey is what I say. And then push down on the legs, like so. Now this is kind of important. Sometimes people go like that, or sometimes people go like that. But the way that the stand is the most stable is when these are parallel to the floor. So you might be in a situation where this footprint is a little large, like maybe you need to fit it in a really small area, and maybe you need to go like that. But just keep in mind, it's not as stable this way. and that you don't, and if you go up this way, it's not as stable this way. The most stable way to do it, if you've got the room, if you have the footprint, make sure these are parallel to the floor. Then, because I loosened this up, lefty-loosey, I do tighty-righty and tighten it back up. Now, you've got your stand, and it's sitting on the ground, okay? I'm going to hold it up just so everyone can see. There are two other knobs here. Now, this is a 6-foot stand. Stands come in various heights, but 6 foot is pretty standard. So you'd loosen the first one up, and on these, it kind of even pops up a little bit. And on some stands, it might pop up a lot. So you don't want to be looking over it, like opening it up like this, things, just basic stuff like that. But it's good to know. And so you can bring this up, and then however high you want, and then you can see how that popped up? So you can loosen this one up. I'm going to tighten up the lower one, loosen this one up, and bring this one up too. Again, this is kind of on a spring. Some are, some aren't. These are. Now I'm going to tighten this one too. Okay. Here's my stand. It's solid. It's going to stay up. Everything's tightened up because I did the what? Tighty-righty. Now, on this particular lighting setup, the light and the softbox all kind of come together. And you may open it up and it's like this. It's like, what is this? What do I do with this thing? So it's you can use a table. Although I have to say I've perfected kind of doing this, just holding it with one hand. So take some practice. But there are these 4 little pins here, and each pin needs to go into the corner of the softbox. And the corner of each 4 corners of the softbox is like a little opening, almost like a little pillow square, and you need to put each one of these pins in that. So you put each one in. And I also, in the video that you see on YouTube, I gave you the URL for, you can watch this. It's the FJ Westcott YouTube channel. So I put each one of these pins in each pocket. And you want to kind of be careful. There's Velcro around this, and I'm going to show you why in a second. Now inside, we've got this big reflective part of the softbox. This helps push the light out a little bit, reflect the light. And there's a plastic kind of light socket that you can see that's going to go, plastic ring that's going to go over the light socket. So you got to push that down. I'm going to push it down like so. And it's, it's a little slightly unwieldy, but you can handle it. And just make sure it pushes all the way. And sometimes you have to kind of play with it. See, I'm doing this live. What's the exact inch of the softbox, Dave?
Sorry?
The exact size of the softbox? I don't know what the inch is. It's 20 inches. So you just want to press it down and make sure it's in there securely. Now also on the outside of this, you've got some Velcro. You want to make sure that these are closed up. You don't want any other light coming out in different directions that might affect your photograph. Just make sure all those are tight. So here's our softbox here. Whoops, and one of these popped out.
Is it good enough for a speed light?
No, it's not really meant for using with a speed light. There are umbrellas and other softboxes you can use with a speed light. This is really more just for the constant light, and I'm going to show you how we plug it in. So okay, it's all adjustable. Now here, another little knob you need to undo and all the way to the left, and just make sure it's clear. You don't want the little pin poking through there, because we're going to put it now on the stand. And it just pops on like so. You can kind of move it around like that, and if you want to tighten it up, you just tighten this knob like so. So if I were tightening it with my right hand, it'd be tighty-righty. Okay, so here it is. Now, I want to put the bulb in. Here's the bulb. You saw the picture of it in the presentation, but this is what it looks like. It's a daylight balance bulb, and it just screws in like any other light bulb does. Like so. So once I screw this in, and also the benefit of these is they're cool to the touch. So even if I had this plugged in for a while, it's going to be a little warm, but I could unscrew it, and so it's not going to burn anything. And then this is the thing that makes everybody look so good. This is the diffusion panel. So you can see it's kind of transparent, kind of translucent. And it has Velcro all around the edges that connect to the Velcro here. I'm sorry, what was your question?
How many watts?
How many watts? Okay, that's a good question because these are fluorescent bulbs, so they're going to draw about 85 watts each from the wall when you plug them in, but they put out equivalent to a little over 500 watts of light together. So each one of these is, I think, about 260 watts of light each one puts out. So if you use them together, a little over 500. But what's great is because they're fluorescent, they last 8,000 hours, as opposed to, I think it's about 60 hours if you had those hot lights. So they last a lot longer, they're cooler, and they're daylight balanced. So you can use them with daylight. A lot of times I like to shoot indoors and with that window light. I don't know if any of you are artists or have studied art, but there was an artist also called Vermeer that used a lot of window light coming in and falling upon his subjects. I love that look of window light, so I like to kind of boost it up with these. Yes?
What degree would that be in Kelvin?
It would be 5,500 degrees Kelvin. So Kelvin is a way that you measure the temperature of the light. And sometimes you'll see it 5,500 K, K for Kelvin.
Thank you.
Yes. So get over here and tighten this one up. So you just kind of put it over the corners like so. I mean, it's pretty durable. All right, so here's the light. And then all you need to do is plug it in, and it turns on with this switch. And that's it. So what I love about these is I can plug a bunch in my house if I want to. I've got like 4 or 5 of these. In fact, a lot of the educational DVDs that I shoot at home, which they're all over the place, and actually the DVD I'm giving away today, I did it at home, but it doesn't look like I did it at home. It looks very professional because I use these lights. So I use it a lot with video too because they're constant light, and it's a daylight balanced light that's nice and soft and diffused. So makes you look good. Very important. Even if I do like a webcam where I teach via web, or I do webisodes or whatever it is, I'm using my webcam to record, I'll put these on the other side of my computer, at least one of them on me, so it just makes me look good. Because so many of those webcams, you just don't look good in them. It's like, it's all about the light. You got to figure out ways to make yourself look good too. Okay. So that's how you set up the light. I just want to be able to show you that so you can see it hands-on. And then if you want to get more online, just go to that URL. So now what we're going to do is take some pictures. Excited? Okay, so here's Laurent. She just came in. I just met her. She's worked with our rep Dave before, and Dave loves her. And she's beautiful, so it's going to be easy to take pictures of her. Laurent, if you just stand up for a second. I just want everybody to be able to see your face. And so, I mean, her face is beautiful, and she's got great cheekbones. I mean, this is like, it's easy to shoot people with cheekbones, and it's going to be easy to light her and everything, and she's got great hair. I can tell she can probably flip it around a little bit. We can get some great shots. And the blouse that she wore is a solid color, and it looks pretty against her skin, and it's also going to pop off of the background, so that's kind of nice too. If she had come in and she had worn, say, a shirt that was similar color to the backdrop, that might look great too, but then I'd have to do a little bit more with the light and make some adjustments, make things to make her kind of pop off of it. Sometimes when you're shooting people, they just sort of blend into the background, so you want to think about ways you can help pop them off the background. Okay, now right now, I'm pretty close to her face. I might want to come back a little bit. I'm going to come over, it's almost like a 45-degree angle. And looks great. Maybe turn a little bit towards the light and let me see, because this looks great. The light looks beautiful on you. Oh, fabulous. Let's see what this looks like. So it'll come up here in just a second. Okay, very pretty. Now, she looks a lot different with this light, right, than she did when she stood up and she was just in like the bright light of the room and illuminated all over. With this light, things are getting a little moodier, right? It's like a little more shadow. So right now I just have one light on her. Look at the catch light in her eye too. You can see the beautiful catch light. So this is where it's with the light just off to the side a little bit, one light, that's it. I'm not lighting up the backdrop or anything, but there's light from this falling upon the backdrop that's giving me some light back there. So here's another little tip too. Whenever you're shooting anyone in front of a backdrop or a wall or whatever, it's a good idea to get them back away from the backdrop. If you have them right against the wall or right against the backdrop, you're going to get some kind of shadow back there. So try to pull them away just a tad. So actually, Laurence, I might have you scoot up just a little bit.
Are you shooting aperture minority or?
Right now, I'm shooting in M manual. And the aperture setting I've got is, my aperture setting, I'm just going for f4. So remember, because this is a fixed aperture lens, so the aperture that I set, it's going to stay right there. And I'm at 1/60th of a second. Now, I recommend not to shoot really any slower than 1/60th of a second, unless perhaps you have something called an image stabilized lens or you're shooting on a tripod, because you're going to get some camera shake. And typically a rule of thumb, especially when you're shooting with a longer lens, is you want to have a shutter speed setting that's commensurate with the focal length of your lens. So what does that mean? Well, I've got a 24-105 lens. If I'm shooting in the longest telephoto focal length of the lens, which would be 105, I probably wouldn't want a shutter speed much slower than 1/100th of a second. But my lens is image stabilized. For Canon, that has an IS after it. If you had a Nikon camera, it'd be vibration reduction. But essentially, that's something within the lens that makes sure it kind of adapts and makes sure it compensates for things to make sure that your picture stays a little sharper than it might normally would. But right now, I'm at 1/60th of a second, f1.4, and my ISO is at 400. And the lens I'm using is a 24-105 f4 lens. I like to use this lens a lot. It's kind of it's my go-to lens. I use quite a bit, especially if I'm traveling and running around in a port somewhere or something and I want to change my lenses a lot. I use this one a lot because I can take in a lot of the wide scenery and then get in close, and I love it for portraits too. Okay, so we're gonna take a couple more shots here. So what I'm gonna have you do, Laurence, is to actually turn away from the light a little bit. Turn your body all the way that way. Yeah, all the way, all the way. There you go. And then back towards me so I can see. That's really pretty, so I can see more of your hair. That's nice. Nice. And what Laurence is doing right now, just so you know, if you can't see her, is in between each shutter, she kind of moves a little bit. And what that does is it gives you some variety in your images. So she's a professional model. Maybe if you're shooting pictures of people that don't know how to do this, you're going to need to be talking to them saying, great, I really like that. Try moving a little bit to the side. Try moving your hair around just a tad. And keep talking to your subject as they're in front of your camera so they kind of move a bit. So what Laurence was doing, if you didn't see all the pictures, is she just slightly moves a little bit in between each shutter. So it's like I just get a little variation if you saw him pop up there on the screen. Fabulous, darling. You're doing a fabulous job. So I like to take pictures too of people in between. So if we're just talking and laughing, I'm still taking the pictures. They're doing whatever they do, and that's oftentimes when you can capture that real look. I mean, it's really see, now she's kind of in between the laugh, and she's just, this isn't the pose, but this is Laurence. And this is something that you can capture too when you're taking pictures of people that you know and love, or if you have, say, a client and you want to capture some shots in between. It's the things that they're doing in between the moments, like, oh, that's so funny, or ah ha ha, or looking off to the side. Those are some authentic moments you can capture in between the posed moments. Okay, so back to the light.
It did make a big difference when you moved up from that back.
Yeah, so that's right. Thank you for that. It made a difference when I moved her away from the background.
About how many feet? About?
Well, right now, she's about, I'd say, 3 or 4 feet away from the backdrop. Now, depending on the real estate that you have, the amount of room that you have to work with, you can pull them way back from the backdrop and not really have to deal with that much. And again, it depends on how much you want to light the backdrop. Talking about the backdrop.
If you weren't using this light, you could use a flash and get the scene.
His question was, if I wasn't using this light, could I use a flash and get the same effect? You can. I mean, lighting is lighting, no matter, it's all about the quality and the direction. If you're making adjustments, say for your speed light, if you're shooting with that or a strobe, you can make the adjustments and get something very similar. It's just going to be a different process you go through to get there. A lot of times with strobe or speed lights, you've got to take a lot of pictures to really test and see what you're getting, because it's that flash of light, right? Boom, boom, boom. And you've got to look at your pictures to make some adjustments. But with this, I can just look right at Laurence and make the adjustments right here. I'm going to try to raise this. And I think this might be one of our stands that's stuck. Oh, nope. Oh, here we go. Okay, so I'm going to raise it even more. And this is good. I like it when little things kind of go a little wrong, so you can see that not everyone's perfect, and you don't have to be either. Things go wrong when you're shooting. You just have to make adjustments. That's the other thing, too. As a photographer, you always have to make sure that you've got backup to whatever you're doing. So make sure that all your batteries are charged. Have more than one battery in your camera. Bring multiple lenses. If you have another camera body, bring it with you to the photo shoot. Always have backup. Always plan for the worst thing possible that could ever happen, and hope for the best. And then tap dance in between. So what I'm doing is I'm bringing the light. It's higher now. It's above her a little bit, and I'm tilting it down just a tad. So now what's happening, and I'll take the photo. Now what's happening is I'm seeing shadows. So this is kind of, the light's coming from more of a higher direction. I'm seeing more shadow under her nose. Maybe turn towards the light just a little bit. That's pretty. And then turn your body all the way towards the light. That's nice. Nice, looks great. And now turn your body all the way to your left. There you go. That's pretty. And maybe shake your hair just a little bit. That looks nice. You've got great long hair. Pretty. Oh, lovely. So see what those look like. So look at the shadow. This is the short lighting that I was talking about, where the shadow on her face is closest to camera. And this has a little bit of a thinning effect. I mean, she's got a great face. Sometimes people just have these perfect faces. Doesn't matter what you do to it, it still looks great. It's not that I have to do much correction to the architecture of her face, but it's a different look. So here she is just facing this light. Okay, let's try to bring in a second light and see what this looks like. And when I turn on this one, let's see what happens. Ooh, this really lights things up. This is just with two lights. So first I experimented by turning off this light, and now I'm lighting up her hair with this other light in the back. I'm just kind of playing around, okay? There's no like map on the floor or anything. And you can do this too, depending on where you're shooting. Maybe you're in a small room in your house and you just kind of want to play around. Wow. So that's starting to look kind of cool. I'm liking that.
If you're doing this kind of playing around, this is a little bit off topic, but how do you charge for a portrait session? Do you do it by time or do you do it by session?
Oh, she had a quick question about how do I charge for a portrait session, by time or by session, and that really is something that you'd all have to think about as business people, and how you want to charge and how you want to convey that. Research the market that you're in right now. Think about the kind of photography you're doing. Other photographers that are out there doing the same thing. What are they doing? You have to research your market first to see what you're up against, and then also, figure out where you're at in the game. If you just started and you just started doing this, you may want to do some on practice and maybe do some on trade and maybe do some for small amounts of money and kind of move up from there. Personally, I charge per session. So, and that's something I talk about too in my book called Make Money with Your Digital Photography. Okay, so we've got these lights on her right now. Let's say I really wanted to light up the backdrop even more. Remember I told you about this other light that sometimes you can have somebody run around the room and follow you with it, but maybe you just want to use it to light up the backdrop. So I would just put it on the floor. And there's stands you can get for putting things near the floor too, but it's not absolutely necessary. And this isn't a hot light, so it's not going to burn the carpet or anything. It's not going to be dangerous to put down there. So I can light up the backdrop behind her too, and maybe, you know, maybe I could even put something like right behind her hair and really get something that's lighting up her hair. So again, just playing around here. But I'm trying different lighting concepts too. Woo! Oh, you know what would be fun too is to get a fan and blow her hair back. I'm sorry, you had a question? Oh, the split lighting? Let's try that, okay? So I'm going to try the split light. So I'm going to lighten up the tilt knob a little bit, bring this down. I think I'll turn this off over here. Okay, you're doing great. Do you mind if I move your hair back a little bit?
Ahead.
Okay. So here's another little tip when you're shooting someone you don't know, and maybe even people you do know. It's always a good idea if you want to do some adjustments like on their hair or their shirt or something, ask before you just stick your hand in there. They are not an object, they're a real live person. So I'd asked her if it was okay if I just moved her hair over a little bit because I see a couple little hairs are just kind of coming over, and you know, we don't have a mirror right now. She could probably go like this, but she may not get it. She may be whatever. So I see it, so I'm just going to get it out of the way. Okay, so we're going to do a little split lighting.
Definition of split is that what? Both lights go toward each other?
Right now, I only have one light that's on her. The other light's on the ground. It's kind of lighting up the backdrop. So split lighting typically is just one light coming in from the side.
Oh.
So I'm going to take the shot. Let's see how this turns out. And turn your nose a little bit this way. Yeah, there you go. Just because I'm going for this particular effect. So here we were before. Woo, that was like, I love that shot. That's looking good. Okay, so here's an example of split lighting, okay? So the split lighting, it's on one side of her face. One side's lit, the other one's dark. Let's try it without a smile right now. You're thinking, oh man, I'm pissed. I might want to get some emotion, you know, give some direction for emotion for who you're shooting. Like, I'm really mad, like maybe, oh yeah, this is like for one of those dark movie scenes. So when you're using split lighting, it's kind of it's kind of moody. It's like, rawr. So whatever it is, whatever effect it is you're trying to go for. So okay, that was split lighting. Let's try Rembrandt lighting. Remember the Dutch painter from the 1600s? The lighting that he made famous. So the light's going to come up from a little bit higher, like so, and I'm going to kind of move it around. Let's see, I think it's about right there. And if I just keep your face just like that, Laurence. Looking good. And that's really pretty. Okay, so this is Rembrandt lighting coming up, and you can, up next. So you can see but it's kind of dark Rembrandt lighting still because I only have one light. But you can see where I've moved it around a little bit. Now I'm creating that triangle on her shoulder. Maybe I want to light things up a little bit more in the scene. Because remember, this is kind of skimming her hair. That's where we position that other light. So I've got 3 lights going on right now. One's on the ground, just kind of lighting up the backdrop a little bit. And it's kind of down below, so it's not doing a whole lot down there, but it's doing something. Then I've got this other light over here on the side that's just pointed this way, and it's just kind of skimming her hair. But when I'm composing the shot, I'm not including that in the picture. I'm cropping it out. And then this light here, our main light, the main light that's lighting her up, our key light, is over on the side, but it's kind of coming in from up above. And I might even move it up a little bit higher. And I'm tilting it down just a tad. And I'm just kind of looking at her face to see, okay, is that triangle happening? Maybe I'll feather it over this way just a little bit to brighten things up just a tad. Because before, the last one looked a little dark, didn't it? Okay, so this looks really pretty. The hair is kind of lit up. Nice. Yes, so she said, well, what about putting light under her chin? Well, let's say, gosh, we've run out of light here. Let's say we don't have this. Oh, we did. We only brought 3 lights today. So That's a very timely question, and thank you. You did that right on time because we're going to bring out our reflector now. How did you know to ask that question? Okay.
I'll hold it for you.
So,
I'll be a voice-operated like
all right. Yeah, that'd be even easier. So because of the tight space, typically we use a stand to hold the reflector, but you can also just have someone hold the reflector for you. So what Dave's going to do is step in and reflect some of the light from down below.
Voice activate me.
Okay.
Which way?
So Dave, you're going to come in and just reflect the light from this back up under her face. So Dave is using the silver side of a reflector. Some people have asked me, why do you want to use the silver? Why do you want to use the gold? Gold tends to warm things up a little bit, and that's kind of a different color than what we're in right now. We're in daylight balanced light, so what works best when working with daylight balanced light is the silver side of the reflector. It doesn't introduce really any other color. It sometimes can be a little harder than gold, but not much. And it just, what he's doing now is just bouncing some light that's coming from this right here, our main light, into the reflector, and you've got to kind of move it around to find the light and look at her face as he's holding it. I'm going to take a picture now so you can see. And it's really brightening things up. So it's softening that shadow. And so now look how luminous things look now with this reflector. In fact, a lot of times when I take pictures of actors and models in Los Angeles, headshots and things, and we're just doing it on the fly, even outside, reflector, you have to have a reflector. And sometimes they'll just sit there and hold it right under their face. So try doing that. Sometimes you can just have the model just hold the reflector like that, and you've kind of got to get in close to take the shot. But it's up close to their face. It fills in any shadows. It just creates this nice sort of luminous look to their face. And you can kind of really play around with this. So maybe I'd want to move the light maybe over this way a tad. And always make sure if you have a reflector that you're not blocking the light with the reflector. You're actually finding wherever the light is and then reflecting that light back on whoever you're shooting.
Potato chip, too.
Yeah, and he's kind of potato chipping it. That's a good term. He's potato chipping it. You can bend these things. You can contort them pretty much any way you want.
Unless you are using a stand.
Unless you've got a stand, but even with a stand, you can kind of squish things around and, shape it the way that you want. So Dave's going to pull out the boom. This is a light stand with what's called an arm on it, and there's a kit that Westcott has. The reflector stand, so it comes with these three things. And I'll also show you the reflector when we finish with it, because it's gold on one side, silver on the other, and then you unzip it and it's a translucent diffuser in the middle. Excellent, thank you. So now what he's doing is he's taking this light that's coming here and reflecting it back on her. So it's almost as if, if you were to get the kit, it comes with two lights. So let's just say this is what you wanted to do. You want to use one light for the hair light or the backdrop and one light to light her, but this is bouncing light. So in essence, it's almost like a third light. It's a third light source. Okay. Excellent. You're doing it. Yeah, that looks really good. So he's kind of positioned it at a tilt, so he's reflecting the light coming in from this. And that's great. Maybe face more of the reflector and see what that looks like. Okay, now face the light a little bit more. Pretty. Even more, kind of face that's pretty. Okay, so the reflector is softening the shadows. It's filling in the shadows. You can do that oftentimes with your second light. No, let's try. I'm going to move the light now a little bit farther away and move it more in the front. That looks nice. Yeah, right there. And that's how you can direct your assistant that's holding your reflector. They're moving around, go right there. That looks good. That looks great. Pretty. Maybe shake your hair around just a little bit. That's nice. Yes. So it was a great suggestion. How else can you fill in those shadows? What else can you do with the light? So I love how that other light is kind of coming in and lighting up her hair. And I love how the reflector is adding this luminous glow to her face. I'd like to play around with this light a little bit, but keep in mind we've got the reflector sitting there, so that's reflecting this. If I move the light out, all the way out, the reflector has nothing to reflect. So you kind of want to pay attention. If you've got a stationary reflector, where is it? And move this in. Let's try moving it in really close. Tilt it down. I'm going to get in really close. And look, actually look straight at me. Pretty. Oh, that's nice. And keep in mind too, when you get in really close and zoom into someone, it creates a more intimate sort of feel, sort of look. Okay, so for this, I'm looking at the reflection in her eye. Now you can see the reflector kind of underneath, and then you can see the main light in her eye. So keep in mind, sometimes there's some people that are really picky about the number of catch lights they see in an eye. It's like they don't want 2, 3, 4 catch lights, and they just want one. So it just kind of depends on what your personal preference is. Personally, having more than one catch light in the eye, as long as the other one is a lot smaller, is fine by me. Also, having catch lights at certain places in the eye. You know, oftentimes they'll say 10 and 2, that's where you should have the catch light. But you can, you know, as long as you know what the rules are, then you can break them. That's my motto. You know, you have to make things look the way you want them to look, right? You're the creative person. What's the point of being creative if there are all these rules you have to follow, right? You want to know what they are, follow them, try them out, and then break them.
Is there any reason or any way to light behind the backdrop?
Her question was, can you light behind the backdrop? That is something you could do. I'm not going to do it today because it involves a lot of moving around and we're almost finished here. But you could do all kinds of cool things. I mean, there are ways where you could bring in lights from behind the backdrop that would diffuse through the fabric. There are ways where you could maybe take 2 lights and just light up the backdrop and then use one other light to light your model. Or one light to light the backdrop and one light to light the model and no reflector. I mean, there's all kinds of variations. But I think you can kind of see here where you can take one light, you can take 2 lights, you can take a reflector and really kind of mix things up and make it look the way you want. But think about what you want to, light is what we're going to see. Light is what draws your attention. Everything that's in focus and lit is what is the first place that your eye goes. So think about that when you're lighting your photograph. Do I want this person's hair to really pop and show, you know, off the backdrop, or do I want it to kind of blend in? If you want it to blend in, don't light it. Or they might have a color of hair that like dark hair on a light background that's automatically going to pop off. But I'm loving this right now. It's this like really kind of fashion beauty light that's coming up next. And you can really see, you know, this is like the beauty light. You know those infomercials with the women that show the before and after on TV? And, you know, it's like, you know, the after can't be that good. Well, perhaps they're using lighting like this. You know, you can really sort of pump things up and make people look even better, because it really is all about the light. I don't know if you ever saw the Seinfeld episode where he quit dating that girl because he saw her in the wrong light. So think about the right light. Okay, and I like this light sort of right in front of her too, and I'm going to just kind of get in. I'm going to contort myself and get in here and capture the shot. I may adjust my settings a little bit. Like right now I'm at 1/80th of a second, but maybe I want to go at, say, 1/100th of a second. I'm in f4. This looks pretty. I just keep wanting to get her hair all in here too. And you can actually try moving around just a little bit. Let me just see how it looks if you'd like totally face the reflector. That's pretty. Nice. And maybe eyes down and then slowly look up towards me. And really pretty. And then right at me. Nice. Very nice. She has such great eyes and features. And you know, framing a shot where you have something visual to frame the face. It could be, you know, a framing element you incorporate into the scene, or it might be just the hair itself. I mean, right now, her hair is like a beautiful frame around her face. Thank you, Lawrence.
For more information, please visit us online, give us a call, or stop by our New York City Superstore. You can also connect with us on the web.